Hi, today we will talk about the gods of the Gentile Roman religion. Everybody knows that Mars is the god of war, Venus is the goddess of love, Neptune is the god of the oceans, so we could also stop here. Well, not a long time ago, a guest in my house, an evangelical, as soon as he learned that I was following the ancient ways, he blurted out with a memorable, "Then you worship the planets." The fact is that after almost 2,000 years of disinformation and tweets, it is difficult to explain that the traditional Roman religion has a depth, a vertiginous verticality, to say the least. I do not want to anticipate the next lesson, but at the time of the controversy with the nascent Christianity, the classical and pagan world had a highly developed theology and was placed at the philosophical and cultural level much higher than the Christianity, which instead struggled with fanatism, councils and condemnation of heresy to find its theological structure by copying the work of Neoplatonic pagan philosophers, these authentic giants of thought such as Plotinus, Porphyry, Jamblichus, Proclus, and so on. I really recommend to read the works of these henotheistic philosophers. At the end of the lesson, I will also give you a reference to a philosophical set of articles that you can find in our site of Saturnia Tellus. In this lesson, we will barely mention theological understanding, but we will limit ourselves to presenting the functions of the main gods. So if you feel it, just follow me. Let's remind that the understanding of the divine is not dogmatic in Gentile Roman religion. That is, everybody can understand the gods as they wish, since, as we have repeatedly explained, it is important what you do, while what you believe is rather marginal. In fact, theological interpretation of religion was a centuries-long process that became important in the late ancient world in the context of the Roman Empire. Although polytheistic theology has roots in Plato's thought, it is based on the philosophical conception of Plotinus, probably a Hellenized Egyptian, who opened his Neoplatonic school in Rome in the 3rd century of the Common Era. Plotinus imagined that all reality proceeded from a single, absolutely transcendent principle, the One, from which ideas and their materialization unraveled. Plotinus' thought was systemized by one of his disciples, Malcho, a Phoenician who studied for a long time in Rome and who lived in Sicily, known by the Greek name of Porphyry. He linked his master's idea to the deities of the Greco-Roman pantheon, establishing a transcendent principle from which ideas, gods, and our reality are generated. The Syrian philosopher Jamblichus perfected these principles and influenced Proclus, a Greek from Lycia, who in the 5th century systematized henotheistic theology in a rigorous form. Broadly speaking, Platonic theology is an overlap of Plotinus' purely logical deductive philosophy with traditional religion. The basic concept of Platonic theology is that on the one hand, there is a single transcendent and immutable principle, the One. On the other part, we have matter, which instead represents absolute multiplicity and which can be shaped by temporarily receiving the eternal forms for a short time. Between these two extremes, total unity and total multiplicity, there is a chain of emanations due to the generating power inherent in the One, in a kind of perpetual Big Bang that acts on a material, spiritual, and mental level. Each emitted entity has less power than the previous entity and tends to return to its origin, to the direction of the One. Simplifying, the higher entities are full of power but transcendent and unknowable by us humans. In the Roman religion, they correspond to the gods superiores et involuti, not manifest, symbolized by the singularity of the polar north. The first manifestation, the door to which is beyond, is Janus, called the father of the gods. Then we find the consent gods, those of the pantheon, so to speak. At the lower level, there are the earthly deities, such as Tellus and nature, and demons. The demon class has a great verticality. The most powerful demons help people. They are the so-called geniuses, or agathos daimos in Greek, similar to the Christian guardian angels, with an anagogic guiding function, meaning that they help people to rise to a more spiritual level. The lesser demons are neither positive nor negative, but they can cause discomfort and confusion in their chaotic action, which can distract us from the backward providential path towards the spirituality of the One, the good. There is no devil, there is no Satan, no evil principle. Evil, in the classic vision of the world, is the absence of good, the absence of spiritual direction, whatever the religious structure that contains it. For the Roman religion, the spiritual direction toward the transcendence of the One is that of the Pax Deorum, achievable with the Pietas and the Cultum Deorum. In the last lesson, we saw how in the domestic rite we appeal to various divinities. On the one hand, Janus, with his transcendent aspect of the axis of reality. On the other hand, the Genius Loci, with his local aspect. A question could be, why shouldn't we directly address the most powerful divinity, the boss? Well, let's consider a real-life example. The Prime Minister, or the President, is certainly one of the most powerful men or women. He could get a resolution to go to war, to be voted on, and my life would certainly suffer a lot. Yet it is more likely that the city planning councillor of my city, by closing the road by which I can access to my house, will immediately change my daily life. Not to mention those who live in my house, who certainly do not have the power of the Prime Minister or the city planning councillor, but can make my life a joy or a hell without effort. Hence, the functional conception of divinity, which can act on different levels of our existence, in transcendental form, on a high plane, or in a low plane of immanent everyday life. The fact is that, considering the Pax Deorum as a path from matter to transcendence, every single step and aspect of the path must be considered. In plain language, how can one expect to make a courtly transcendental spiritual discourse invoking the highest divinities if one does not resolve one's daily demons, so to speak? We will now review again, I emphasize very briefly, the main deities. Janus, the powerful Italic deity not shared with the Greek pantheon, is the Deus Deorum, the primeval god of the Roman lineage. He is the polar axis. Besides him, the divinities are neither knowable nor manifest, while he is only partially manifest. Actually, his face seems to come out from an impenetrable dimension, like a mirror, and the first mirror image is precisely his emerging face on the metaphysical level. So he is the God of the passage from the unmanifest to the manifest. Hence, his relationships with the door, which in Latin is called Janua, like Janus. He is called Clusius as the one who closes, and Patulcius as the one who opens. The triumphal arches reflect these characteristics at the celebration of the passage. On the temporal plane, he is the God of the beginning, of the year, of the month, of the rite, or even of the word, which is why he is called in Carmen Saliares Duonus Ceros, the good creator. He is the guardian of the summer solstice, the door of men, and of the winter solstice, the door of gods. In Roman historical mythology, Janus is considered the first king of the Golden Age, therefore the founder of history. Saturn is purely Italic, with very different aspects from Kronos, the Greek counterpart, which instead has a dramatic character. Saturn, in fact, landed in Italy and was welcomed by Janus as his successor to the kingdom, bringing that culture and knowledge that would have fueled the Golden Age. The land under his reign took his name, Saturnia Tellus, the Italic land under the scepter of Saturn. The great feast of Saturnalia is celebrated in his name, remembering the joys of the Golden Age. The Pontifical College maintained great secrecy of this divinity. In Neoplatonic theology, it has an interface function with the unmanifest world, like Janus in the Latin tradition, as if to confirm the juxtaposition of these two divinities as per the Italic mythological narrative. In this sense, Saturn also guides a passage, the dissolution of social conventions as well as the end of the old year, a liberation from superstructures certainly necessary before passing through the Janus Gate. The early Roman religion did not represent the deities in the tale and did not have a mythology as colorful and rich as the Greek one. Over the centuries, the Roman religion assumed many characters of the Greek one, and the understanding of divinities in general was Hellenized. This did not happen with Janus, it did not happen with Saturn, and much less with Mars. While the Greek Ares is the god of war in all its bloody aspects, Mars is first of all Mars Pater, the father Mars, father of all Romans, father of Romulus and Quirinus, protector of agriculture, armed defender of cultivated land. Mars connects the origin of Rome to its Italic Sabine component. Many celebrations are dedicated to him for his various aspects of generative principle of father and of defender through the year. Jupiter, or Dies Peter, the father sky, is the celestial god of the Indo-European peoples, god of thunder and rain. In Rome, he is the god of sovereignty, interpreted as Jupiter Optimus Maximus by the augurs, which by elaborating the auspices guarantee the imperium and existence of the state. For this reason, the cult of Jupiter is first of all public, linked to the state, is magistrate and citizen, in a sacred and founding faction, keeper of the pacts and of the established order. His Flamen Dialis had to live in a permanent purity regime, far from politics. Philosophically, Jupiter is recognized as the demiurge, the one who shapes the cosmos according to divine forms, once again with the function of keeper of the institutional order of the city, of the state, of the world with international pacts, and of the cosmos with its laws. The importance of Juno for the Res Publica is underlined by the fact that the goddess is part of the Capitoline triad. Juno is not the jealous wife of Jupiter as happened for Hera in the Greek mythology for Zeus, a myth which, among other things, even if make us smile, is philosophically interpreted as the form that contains the power. In the Roman religion there is no mythological narration of Juno, but not even of Jupiter. The function of Juno can be deduced from the calendar. First of all, she is a moon goddess, to whom the calends and the nonas are dedicated. Juno protects the women in marriage, but also in childbirth, like Juno Lucina. But in addition to a female function, she has a warlike aspect. She is venerated as Juno Moneta, the one who warns, recalling a historical fact when her Gs woke the Romans by foiling the assault of the Gauls on the Capitoline fortress, and as a warrior and fecundating goddess in Juno Sospita in Lanuvio. The result is the figure of a mother goddess ready to fight for her offspring. From here to protector of the homeland, the step is short. Minerva, who forms the Capitoline triad with Jupiter and Juno, like the Greek counterpart Athena, represents the mind, the intellect. Although she is an unimportant divinity, that is Italic, at least for the shared name, not only among the Italian Indo-European people, but also with the Etruscan, she nevertheless seems very similar to Athena. Let's not forget that among the sacred objects of Rome, there was the Palladio, a wooden statue of Athena brought by Aeneas himself from Troy. So the goddess, even if not very celebrated, maintains a contact in the Roman daily life. Venus has a special bond with Rome, being the mother of Aeneas. Julius Caesar had promised her a temple in vow during the Battle of Pharsalus. Victoriously, Caesar dedicated the temple to Venus Genitrix, thus underlying his divine origin through the gens Julia, descendant of Iulus or Ascanius, the son of Aeneas. Venus is a complex divinity which gathers various manifestations, certainly linked together in a coherent framework, but with noticeable different accents. Thus, we find Venus Genitrix, which represents the disruptive force of the spring generation. On the feast of the Veneralia, Roman women sought beauty. In Sicily, with Venus Erycina, the most erotic aspect of the divinity, Venus was celebrated in this erotic aspect, while with Venus Victrix, it is celebrated in the aspect that brought Venus close to Jupiter. I comment only that in our culture, beauty is not hidden, is not covered, but it is celebrated, as it is considered divine power and a form of spiritual elevation. I have already mentioned Vesta several times, the goddess of the home of the sacred fire. Like almost all the Roman gods, she does not present a Roman mythology, and before the Hellenization there was no trace of anthropomorphization. Vesta is therefore the good fire, with a right of very ancient origin shared with other Indo-European peoples. The Greeks know her as Vestia, which became Hestia in their language. We remember that just as Janus is invoked at the beginning of the ritual, Vesta is invoked at the closure, returning home. Ceres, whose name is linked to creating, is an ancient Italic divinity of the agricultural cycle, fertility, and generosity of the land. She was also revered as the goddess Dia and associated with the Greek Demeter for her affinity for function. The biggest feast of her is that of Cerealia in April, the only initiatory cult accepted by the traditional Roman religion was that of Ceres. We confirm in this way that the Roman religion had special links not only with the sky, but also with the earth. Diana is also a divinity of Italic origin, venerated since the time of the Latin Confederation, queen of the woods, forests, mountains, but also of all the animals. Her natural and feminine strength is also expressed through her function of promoting procreation and birth. We recall that she was very soon identified with the Greek Artemis, with whom she shows a great functional similarity. Apollo, since the earliest time, had been revered in Rome above all in his medical and magical aspect. He is the god of prophecy and is identified with the Greek Apollo revered in Delphi, often visited by the Roman ministers who traveled to receive a prophecy. In the religious reform of Augustus, Apollo took on a more sunny character, overlapping Phoebus. In late ancient philosophy, as a solar deity, he was understood as a manifestation of the transcendent one. Mercury entered the Roman pantheon relatively late, probably imported by the Etruscans as terms and immediately identified with the Greek Hermes. Despite his late arrival, he was highly revered as a god of commerce and eloquence, but also the god that guides the souls in the underworld. He was understood as the god of the occult, especially in the late empire, in full syncretism. Just think of the work of Hermes Trismegistus, Mercury 3 times great, where the Egyptian tradition, Thoth, blends with the Greek one, founding the Hermetic tradition. In any case, in Roman religion, the main function is that of the god of commerce. Neptune. Neptune was originally the god of streams, lakes, rivers, and ponds. Later, he was associated with Poseidon, assuming its characteristics. Neptune is at the head of the disruptive and uncontrollable forces of nature. He is a god little revered in Rome, but of great power, being considered the brother of Jupiter. It is interesting to note that Gemistos Plato, in his proposal for a re-edition of polytheism at the beginning of Renaissance, placed Neptune at the head of his theological construction. Vulcan represents the fire of the earth with all its destructive power. His temple was located outside the walls of Rome to protect the city from fires, which when they broke out were devastating. Its main festival is that of Vulcanalia on the 23rd of August, both related to the summer fires of the agricultural tradition and to the end of the dry season to prevent fires. For reason of space, we cannot deal with all the divinities. We only remember the names of the main ones: Rhea, assimilated to Ops, Bacchus, and Pluto. Then we mention the indigenous gods such as Quirinus, Hercules, the Dioscuri, Castor and Pollux, Faunus, Silvanus, Vertumnus, Pomona, Pale, Flora, Mater Matuta, Sol Indiges, Furrina, Angerona, Bellona, Carmenta. We also remember the Mani and the Penates and the Genius. The religiosity of the Romans is reflected in a number of manifestations of the divine recognized over the centuries. As you have seen, the Roman pantheon is complex and multifunctional, with a strong Italic base enriched by the encounter with the Greek word, often through the Etruscan one. In the end, it is not a matter of knowing the list of gods by heart or formulating a creed for this or that divinity, but rather in experiencing the different manifestation of the divine. The website of the traditional Roman movement, Saturniatellus, offers interesting articles on the whole sphere concerning the Gentile Roman religion. So if you don't know it, I invite you to take a peek in our online magazine. I also want to remind you that if you have any questions about the material presented so far, or even constructive criticism, suggestions, or simply you want to write to me to say hi, you can contact me at the following email address: mtr.didactica@gmail.com. In the next lesson, which will be the last of this cycle, we will present a burning topic: how the Gentile Roman religion was forced to stop, and when and who tried and managed to revive it. Thanks for watching. Vale bene, impaccherò.